Good morning. This is Father Stephen Kelly from St. John's Church in Detroit. And we are continuing our series of daily morning meditations, looking generally at one or another of the lessons that are assigned for morning or evening prayer, what is known as the daily office lectionary. This morning, I am coming to you from our vestry room here at St. John's, and over my shoulder here is our portrait of Bishop William Armitage. Now, when Bishop Armitage was Father Armitage, he was the first rector here at St. John's Church in Detroit. He was here for the first 7 years of the parish before being elected the Bishop of Wisconsin. He was elected at first to be the assistant bishop of Wisconsin under a very famous bishop named Bishop Jackson Kemper, who was the great missionary bishop to that area. And then when Bishop Kemper retired, it was Father Armitage who took his place as diocesan bishop. He had, unfortunately, only 7 years there. He died in his 40s while he was on church business in New York. And the man who was elected to succeed him was another famous Episcopal person in our book of Lesser Feasts and Fasts, and that is James de Koven. And if you know the story of James de Koven and the Anglo-Catholic movement in the Episcopal Church, James de Koven actually had his election overturned by the other dioceses because of his high churchmanship. So Father Armitage was right in between two great lights of the what's known as the Oxford movement in the Episcopal Church to restore Catholic discipline and worship within Anglicanism, and particularly in the Episcopal Church of the United States. So we give thanks to Almighty God for the ministry of Father Armitage, of Bishop Armitage, who is in fact buried at Elmwood Cemetery here in Detroit. He had 3 children die, twin boys and then another boy, while he was rector here in Detroit. That was unfortunately not uncommon for children to die, all 3 of them in their first year. And then his wife, Father Armitage died in 1873. His wife died in 1921. So that's really pretty remarkable. She lived to a ripe old age, and they are all buried at Elmwood Cemetery. Today I want to talk a little bit about St. Paul's letter to the Romans, and we've been working our way through it. We're up to chapter 3 already. And interestingly, though, we did jump ahead to chapter 12 when we were doing the lesson for evening prayer yesterday on Sunday night. Because remember, Sunday readings don't always follow sequentially. So we're back to chapter 4, and St. Paul has been building up the case, explaining to the Romans why it is that God is now including the Gentiles, even though the Jews themselves are a very important aspect of what it is that God is doing. And of course, salvation is from the Jews in that particular sense. So that's all very important for us. But remembering, though, that it's not the law, one of the points that Paul wants to get across is that the righteousness for the Jewish people of the original covenant wasn't because of the law and the rules, but it was because of faith and grace. And that it starts off with Abraham, that Abraham was the chosen person for whom God would work through and develop this new nation, not because of Abraham's obedience to the laws and to the rules, but because of his faithfulness, his willingness to do and to be and to believe. And so he says this at the beginning of chapter 4, verse 13. For the promise that should be the heir of the world was not to Abraham or to his seed through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. For if they which are of the law be heirs, faith is made void, and the promise made of none effect. Because the law worketh wrath, for where the law is, there is no transgression. Therefore it is of faith, and that might be by grace, to the end the promise might be sure to all the seed, not only that which is of the law, but that which is also of the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. So St. Paul here goes on to say that, look, it's not because they were following the rules or even because they're part of the original covenant, that the real heirs of Abraham aren't just his physical seed, right, his children, but the real heirs of Abraham are those of us who follow the faith of God, for God, that Abraham believed, that Abraham followed. That in fact it was that faith, that it comes by grace, that was the saving moment and the cement for the relationship between God and his chosen people, not the law itself. In fact, most of the tenets of the precepts of the law come later on anyway. But it's through faith that Abraham does this. And so we too have access to the same faith, don't we? And so we who believe, who believe that Jesus Christ is Lord, whether we be Jew or Gentile, become heirs of the promise in the same way that Abraham did through faith as well in God's promise. So I hope that today you have a wonderful Monday and that you continue in faith by the gift of grace in Jesus Christ. Have a blessed day.